1916 was a momentous year in the life of Chick Evans. The likable Chicagoan was already considered one of the leading golfers of the era, having won the Western Open and 5 Western Amateur titles. But in 1916, Chick became the first player ever to win both the U.S. Open and Amateur Championships in the same year, permanently engraving his name in golf's record books. Shortly after his historic double victory, Evans faced the possibility of turning professional and decided against it. His devotion to the game precluded any thoughts of accepting money to play it. Chick's mother, who was one of her son's most devoted fans, suggested that perhaps he should do something for the young men coming up through the caddy ranks as he had. Chick caddied at Edgewater Country Club as a lad. His first loop earned him 20 cents with a 15-cent tip. The idea of helping young lads get a college education greatly appealed to Chick, and the Evans Scholar concept was born. It took a number of years before Chick was able to find a sponsor for the program, but the Western Golf Association finally put its endorsement on the idea. Any money that came Chick's way through golf would be dedicated to the caddy scholarships, and the WGA also would solicit supporting funds. In 1930, the first 2 Evans Scholars entered Northwestern University. We're here in the Board of Directors room of the Western Golf Association with Brian Fitzgerald, the Public Relations Director of the WGA. Brian, I want to thank you for letting us use this nostalgic room for this segment of our show. First thing I need to know is, how do you become an Evans Scholar?
Well, Mike, the requirements for an Evans Scholarship are the same today as they were when Chick Evans founded the program 54 years ago. A young boy or girl in high school who wants an Evans Scholarship has to have a bona fide record as a caddy with a member club of the WGA. Also has to be in the top 25% of his or her high school class, and at the same time has to be in the need of financial aid, and that's determined through a scale that we have here at the Western Golf Association. Once they get through that, they have to go through a series of interviews to determine whether or not they fit the mold of the program and whether or not we think they'll be successful as an Evans Scholar.
Brian, in 1930, as the first 2 Evans Scholars were entering Northwestern University, the WGA was already 31 years old. What can you tell us about its creation back in 1899?
Well, Chicago was an area that was very strong in golf early on, and the USGA in New Jersey was relatively new, only 4 years old. And the clubs in Chicago area and west of the Mississippi felt that the USGA wasn't giving them enough representation in decisions regarding the sport. And so a number of clubs in the Chicago area and surrounding area decided to form their own organization, the Western Golf Association. The initial purpose of the organization was just to have a legitimate organization and at the same time run 2 championships for the golfers in the area, which were the Western Open and the Western Amateur.
And then the first one was held soon after the charter was drawn up?
That's correct. They were the first 2 championships after the charter was drawn up in the spring of 1899. The first 2 championships were scheduled for the late summer, and they were held simultaneously, the Open and the Amateur. And you have to understand that at the time, amateur golf was the sport of golf in the United States. Professional golf was really dominated by the Scots professionals that had come over, and so the amateur was the big thing. But the Amateur and the Open were both conducted at the same time at the Glenview Club, which is about a 3-iron away from where we sit. And first Western Open was decided by a playoff between Willie Smith and Laurie Ochterlony, and Willie carded a 74 and won by 10 strokes, so it wasn't a real nail-biter.
It's a runaway.
Right, right.
For 70 years, the Western Open was played at different courses throughout the country. What are some of these memorable Western Opens of the past?
Yeah, that's interesting, Mike, because the Western Open really laid the groundwork for what is now the tour, because they traveled around the country and exposed golf to areas that weren't used to seeing it or really introducing the sport to them, and it traveled all over the country. It started here in Gulf, Illinois, but it went as far as San Francisco at Presidio, and it's gone to Detroit and to the East Coast. It's traveled all over. Some of the better championships that have taken place included Ben Hogan at Brookfield in 1948. He set a course record 64 in defeating Porky Oliver. Jack Nicklaus won at Beverly in 1967. Nicklaus was also involved in another great playoff between Arnold Palmer and Julius Boros and himself. It was probably one of the most memorable Western Opens, and Arnold prevailed in that one.
In a three-way playoff?
Three-way playoff. Three best players in the world at the time, Julius, Jack, and Arnold, and they all three, the interesting thing is all three of them got together on Monday morning and decided at that time playoff monies went to the players. Anything you brought in at the gate went straight to the players, and those players decided at that time that anything that came in the gate would go straight to the Evans Scholars Foundation.
Oh, that's nice.
So they've always, since that time, this is back in 1961, they've always had a very fond relationship with the Evans Scholars Foundation.
Jack must have been quite young back then.
Yeah, but he was also quite good.
Yeah.
People don't realize Jack probably should have won the U.S. Open as an amateur, and the first tournament he ever won was the U.S. Open, so he came onto the scene in a big way, and he hasn't left yet.
Would you please explain the caddy system that's currently used at the Western Open?
Well, the Western Open is unique because it's the only event on the PGA Tour that doesn't allow the tour caddies, the professional caddies, to travel with the players. We support the caddy programs in the Chicago area by asking them to provide one or two of their top caddies, and they're placed into a large pool of caddies. We have to have 152 for the tournament. All the #1 ranked caddies from all the areas, all the clubs in Chicago are placed in the Western Open trophy. All their names are placed in the trophy, and then we just start to draw them, and they actually draft the players that they want to caddy for. So the first one pulled out takes Tom Watson, and we go from there.
The players seem to enjoy working with the young caddies for a week. Do you get any sort of feedback from them? Or?
We get positive feedback when we do. It's something that we know is an inconvenience to the tour player because they're used to relying on their own professional caddies, but they're all very familiar with their Evans Scholars program, and they're very willing to support it. And I think they enjoy the break, you know, to see how, you know, something different, and they like to see the young kids. They're enthusiastic, and what they lack for in understanding the player's individual nuances and the way he plays the game, they make up for in hustle and working hard.
Yeah, I sure noticed that. Do you think the possibility to someday caddy in the Western might make our local caddies a notch above?
I think there's no question that the incentive of caddying in the Western Open is a major factor in recruitment for the clubs in our area, as is the Evans Scholarship itself. I think that if you can tell a young man or young girl that they can spend the summer in the outdoors and at the same time have an opportunity to caddy for the professional golfer and maybe down the road win a 4-year education, I think that it's a pretty good incentive to have them come out.
It sure is, and unique to this area.
Oh yes, very much so.
For the past 10 years, the Western has been played out at Butler National. What was behind the move to Butler?
Well, I think that if you were familiar with the finances that are required to run a major championship now, you'd realize that you need a permanent site, someplace that they can go back to each year because of the telephone lines and the setups that's involved. If you can make some of them permanent, you can reduce the cost of putting on the event. There was a need for the Western to anchor itself somewhere, and Paul Butler, who was a millionaire sportsman that built the village of Oak Brook, was very interested in building a championship golf course, but only if he could have a major championship there. So he got together with Marshall Dan, our executive director, and relied on Marshall a great deal for advice while he was building the golf course, as well as a few other people. But they worked out an agreement at that time, back in 1973, that if they could put together a championship golf course, the Western Golf Association would take it to the board of directors for approval as the permanent site of the Western Open.
How have the galleries been since the move to Butler?
Well, that's another thing that's been helped by the permanent switch to Butler, I think, is that the galleries have become more familiar with the golf course and the area, so that we've started to draw a larger crowd, and I think they're consistently coming back because they know where it is, and it's an ideal situation for us. It's a large area that can accommodate a large crowd and keep them comfortable, and the crowds in the 10, 11 years that we've been at Butler have been consistently very big and larger than they were before.
Butler National, as it matures, seems to be becoming a better course. Does a better course make for a better field of players?
Oh, I think there's no question of that. Any golf course is going to be a better golf course the older it gets, the more chance it gets to mature. Butler has not only matured, but it's also, the conditioning of it has improved. Oscar Miles has done a terrific job out there, and the golf course is in as fine a condition as any they have on tour. And I think that the reason that it's starting to draw a better field for us is because we might have gone to Butler a year too soon.
Yeah.
And the condition of the golf course became a subject with the players. They didn't like it because it was hard and too penalizing for a good shot. So that now that it's more receptive to good shots and it's matured and it's in better condition, I think they're taking more notice of it. And as that word spreads around the tour, you start to draw back some of the players that might have avoided us in the past are starting to come back, and I think that the quality of our field at Butler National has been improved consistently over the past 5 or 6 years.
And then you have a new date for next year?
That's right. We're going to move to August the 1st through the 5th weekend, that first week of August next year. It's a change that was made to accommodate some other sponsors. We're not really sure that it's going to be a permanent change. My gut feeling is that we'll go back to the 4th of July, but the tour office asked us to make this change, so we'll roll with it, and I don't anticipate any problems. We'll be the week before the PGA Championship, but the PGA Championship next year is at Cherry Hills in Denver, so it's almost nice swing for the players to go straight from Chicago to Denver. It's very easy for them, so I don't anticipate losing any players because of it, and hopefully we'll pull some of the foreign players who like to play the week before the PGA, players like Aoki and Ballesteros and Langer that we haven't been able to get in the past.
Boy, that would really be nice. That would be nice. Well, Brian, as we said, Butler National is maturing and becoming a better course, and this isn't just our opinion. This year's course superintendent, Oscar Miles, was presented with the prestigious PGA's award for the best maintained and prepared course for a tour event this year.
It's indeed a pleasure for me to be here today to present the PGA Tour and the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America Citation of Performance Award to Oscar Miles, Golf Course Superintendent, Butler National Golf Club. This award is given annually to the superintendent who has demonstrated outstanding achievement in preparing and conditioning and maintaining his golf course for a PGA Tour event, and in this case the 1984 Western Open. I've known Oscar many, many years, and not only has he done a magnificent job here at Butler, but he has been a leader in the golf course management field. Dean Beeman, the commissioner of the PGA, has said that Oscar has done a superb job in preparing Butler National or in making Butler National one of the best prepared golf courses the PGA Tour played in many a year. And Oscar, it is my pleasure at this time to present you with this beautiful plaque signifying your contributions to the Western Open and to all of golf. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Jim. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. Thank you, Lord, for the good weather we've had. I accept this on behalf of Butler National Golf Club and the support that they've given me, Mr. Jones, the club president, Bob Duffy, our Greens chairman, and the previous chairman, and in the memory of Paul Butler, who hired me 4 years ago, and in particular, the greatest grounds crew in the country. Thank you.
Well, Brian, you got a mature course as host, you got better galleries every year, better field of players every year, top-notch caddies. Sounds like you guys here at WGA have really been doing a bang-up job. I want to thank you for your help with our project, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I have no doubt that the staff at the Western Golf Association is going to continue to do a fine job. When it comes to the Western Open, they're going to have a lot of help from the staff and members at Butler National Golf Club. We'd like to welcome from that staff Bob Phillip. Bob is the caddy master at Butler National. And joining us a little later, Mr. Bruce Patterson. Bruce is the club pro at Butler National. Bob, as the caddy master at Butler, what do you look for when hiring a club caddy?
Well, Mike, we look for a boy that's willing to work hard, devote the time and the hours it takes to become a good caddy, learn the golf course, learn to help the members. The eventual goal is to caddy in the Western Open.
I see. Do you get good support from the members for your caddy program?
Exceptional, exceptional. Club is very strong and very much behind the caddy situation at our place.
How much does a club caddy rely on the tips he receives? Is that all, or is there a salary involved?
Oh no, we have 3 classes of caddies at our club. We have B, or beginner caddy. Next step up the ladder is A, and then we go to honor. Our B caddy rate is $7 for the bag. Mm-hmm. The A caddy rate is $11, and the honor caddy is $14. Tips are always very much appreciated, and they are a very important part of the caddy's income.
Will a member then request a certain caddy or a certain caddy rating? Then if he wants an A caddy, he knows what it's going to take as far as money from him, or is this something that they get first come, first serve?
No, we have instances where a particular member will request a certain caddy if he's available. If he's not available, the membership is very good. They will essentially take what's available.
Mm-hmm. How many caddies do you have out there at the height of the season?
We'll go between 80 to 90.
Oh, gee, I see. Boy, that's quite a compliment. Do you see other clubs in the area cutting back on their caddies in favor of the golf car?
No, not really. The reason for that is at our club, which I'm sure is pretty much the same at other clubs, it's mandatory that a caddy go with a golf car.
Oh, I see.
In other words, a golf car or 2 golf cars cannot go on the course without a caddy when caddies are available. So that makes the caddy program as strong as it's ever been.
I see. And then they would 4 caddy then when they have a golf car, pretty much?
Correct.
What do you think the chances that a caddy might someday caddy in the Western Open? What does it do for the attitude of your caddies?
Well, the boys that really want to caddy in a Western, which I'm happy to say is the majority, that's their ultimate goal. Mm-hmm. They work hard at that. They realize that they have to sacrifice, on the average, 2 years of caddying before they do get into the Western Open. We have had cases where a boy's done so well that after 1 year, he's in the Western Open. But in the main, they have to spend 2 years of caddying before they qualify for the tournament.
I see. You're also the caddy master at the Western Open. That must be exciting. What kind of duties do you perform?
Well, to start it off, we have caddy orientation, which takes place on a Monday and Tuesday evening before the tournament. Mm-hmm. I'm there for questions, for any help that caddies from the other clubs in the Chicago district may have. I have to make sure the caddies are there on time to meet their players, that they be there on time during the balance of the week, and again, just try to answer any questions that they may have.
And when a player arrives and checks in at the WGA trailer, then they come immediately to you and have their caddy assigned to them? Is that how it works?
Right. The caddy has already selected a player. That takes place in our caddy draw. And it is up to me to make sure that that caddy is there when that player arrives.
I see. What kind of feedback do you get from the professionals on our local caddies?
The majority of them like our people. They really do. It's a different format in that we're the only tournament left on tour today where they cannot use their own caddies, and many of the players enjoy that.
Yeah, they seem to enjoy the opportunity to work with the young kids for at least that week. I don't know if they'd appreciate that all the time, but I think they like the break.
Yes, they do.
Okay. Well, Bob, I certainly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to come and join us. We really appreciate the help. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Joining us now is Bruce Patterson. Bruce is the club professional at Butler National Golf Club. Bruce, you play in a lot of tournaments. What do you like a caddy to do to help you with those first tee jitters?
A caddy is an extremely important part of your game when you're out there playing. You can have the right equipment, and if you have a bad caddy, it makes it awful difficult. You'll note in a lot of the tour caddies, the Nicklases and Trevinos, they seem to have the well-established caddies. And a caddy can't help you on the first tee. He's kind of a coach. He's your backs. He's your source. He's your wealth of knowledge. He can be your yes man. You know, he kind of tells you what you want to hear, and he can put you in your proper place. And he really is a good coach if you got a good caddy.
Now, if you have a caddy that's not familiar with your individual game, how can he help you with club selection?
Well, he couldn't, like a normal caddy would be your regular caddy, he couldn't say, well, it's 156 yards, you should hit your 7-iron. He could just give you the yardages, tell you where the pin placements are, and which most of the tour, they all have the pin placements, positions where the hole is. And so he can give you a lot of the yardages and the wind direction and things that maybe you may not always think of, but he can sure help you and support you in that means.
When you're on the green, do you like to rely on your own green reading, or do you request help from a caddy?
I can request all the help I can find sometimes on reading greens. Depends on the day. Sometimes you can feel yourself, you can see the putt, and I usually like to look at it and myself and get my own idea, and then maybe just ask for a little support here or there if I'm questionable. Sometimes some of them you just can't quite figure out, and you'll go on somebody else's belief, and you'll find yourself hitting a better putt sometimes because you can believe a little bit more in someone else as opposed to your own self-doubt, and it really helps you.
Yeah, I see. If someone says, this is it, you're not second-guessing his opinion,
right.
But you might second-guess your own.
Especially if you make the first couple, and when he says it, then you say, yeah, okay, I believe you.
That's for sure. Do you, out at Butler, do you have time set aside when the caddies can go out and play that fine course?
We do, Mike. It's fortunate. I think we've got one of the better caddy programs anywhere. We're fortunate to have the Evans Scholars and the Western Open, so we do have that kind of in our back pocket. But we don't try to utilize that as strongly as we can, as much as the ability to play the great golf course that we have. Most situations you can play on Mondays in caddies programs. And in ours, because we do have our fair amount of outings, 9 or 10 through the course of the year, we'd like to have our caddies play on Tuesdays and Thursdays afternoon, after like 4:30, 5 o'clock, depending on the time of the season. And it really gives them a good opportunity to play golf and still be able to work during the day, and we use that as an incentive, and it certainly is a good one.
Yeah, to play in that marvelous course. I mean, that's something I know is coveted around the area. Do you have any caddies out there that have any potential as players?
Well, we sure do. There's some guys, we do have a few of them in college now that are playing that we're in a program that Bob has gone through, and there's some guys out there now that when they caddy for me, I feel a little incompetent. They're so strong, but it is a nice setup and a good opportunity for them to play, and it does offer them a good career opportunity when they get to college.
And do they come to you for advice and training? Do you give them help with their game?
Periodically through the year, myself and our staff will work with some of the caddies. We'll try to set up a day or set aside a few times and work with them. They'll come to us and we'll go down on the range and work with them as much as we possibly can. It's difficult to do, but it sure is worthwhile and rewarding if you can help out some of them.
In the older days, it seemed like the professional golfers' ranks were filled with caddies, and now it seems more like they're coming out of the college ranks. Do you think that they're caddying before going into college and it still has that caddying background?
I think that's very true. I think there's a lot of caddies who I know at our club particularly are exposed to an awful lot of good players. And being around some of the people there, they're just going to pick up an awful lot of advice and little ins and outs that you may not. And once you get to college there, you better be prepared to be able to play golf once you're at college. Otherwise, you just aren't going to go much further.
So caddying is still a way to break in to the game.
It sure is. It's a tremendous way. It's the bottom rung of the ladder, but it sure gives you a good education, and you're around a lot of tremendous people, and it's a good way to spend the afternoon.
It sure is. Well, Bruce, I sure want to thank you again for taking time out of your busy day. Every time I've been out to Butler National, whether as a member of the media, a guest player, or a spectator at the Western Open or collegiate tournaments, I've always found a sense of pride on every level at the staff and members at Butler National. I think this is something the late Paul Butler would be very proud of. I'd like to thank you for joining us for our caddy showcase. We've tried to point out how important caddies are to the game of golf, not just for the professional player, but for the club player as well. We'd like to thank the Western Golf Association and Brian Fitzgerald. Brian has helped us with his writing expertise and his general knowledge of golf, and we're very grateful. We'd like to also mention the Evans Scholar Foundation. This worthwhile organization is always in need of your support to keep those kids in school and to keep Chick Evans' dream glowing bright. We'd like to thank Butler National for allowing us to videotape out there on that wonderful course, and we'd like to thank Amling's Flowerland, who helped us with our set here. We'd like to thank you for watching, and we hope to see you all out at the Western Open.